Welcome to the Know, I'm Ashley Jenkins.
And I'm Gus Sorola.
Mass Effect Andromeda, the much anticipated next installment in the venerable sci-fi RPG franchise, is set to hit retailers tomorrow in North America and Europe on Thursday, or I think it unlocks tonight digitally. There's already been a lot of buzz about this game, both good and bad, with many people excited for more Mass Effect and others criticizing the game's character animations, buggy gameplay, backwards guns, that kind of thing.
But now with full-fledged reviews starting to come out, we can start to definitively answer the question, does it suck? And how does Andromeda compare to the other Mass Effect games?
Well, so far, the reviews seem to bear out what we've heard from early impressions, that this Mass Effect Andromeda, has some bright spots, but also a number of problems that you just can't ignore. The PlayStation 4 version currently has a 75 average score on Metacritic based on 28 reviews, which indicates mostly positive reviews, but it's still by far the lowest score ever received by a Mass Effect game. The Xbox One version has a slightly higher score of 77, for some reason, based on 18 reviews. So there is a little bit of variance there, even across platform.
That does not compute.
It's a little weird.
Let's look at some of the individual reviews. Among the highest scores for Andromeda were from COG Connected, who gave it an 88 out of 100. IGN Spain and Forbes both gave it an 8.5 out of 10.
Those are the high points.
That's the peak. In the middle of the pack, Critical Hit gave Andromeda an 8 out of 10, and IGN scored it a 7.7 out of 10. On the low end, GameSpot gave it a 6 out of 10, and GamesRadar gave it a 3.5 out of 5, and GamesBeat gave it a 55 out of 100. Lots of fractions there.
Yeah, quite a range. The consensus from reviewers is that Mass Effect Andromeda has some awe-inspiring environments, and its combat system is fun and fast-paced, but the game is held back by boring characters and dialogue, too many fetch quests, and some technical issues, including bugs and bad character animations, which we've already seen plenty of evidence of. Things like backwards guns, which I experienced last night.
Part of the issue is that Mass Effect Andromeda has some big shoes to fill. The franchise has long been considered one of the pinnacles of modern gaming. All of the previous games have been well received despite some negative reception of Mass Effect 3's ending. The games were best reviewed on the Xbox 360, with the first game getting a 91 score on Metacritic, the second getting a 96, and the third installment getting a 93. Scores were slightly down a bit on the PlayStation 3 and PC, but still all three were well reviewed by critics, with Mass Effect 2 being pretty universally considered a modern classic.
So what we're saying here is this is like 15-20% worse than the other Mass Effects, right? That's what we're getting from this. Critics say that Mass Effect Andromeda, unfortunately, well, based on those ratings, does not live up to the bar that its predecessors have set. GamesRadar said the game was, quote, not a disaster, but definitely not the fresh start the series needed, which I would agree with, so based on what I've played so far. GamesBeat even went so far as to call it EA's Godfather 3.
On the more positive side, Forbes said that the game is enjoyable, even if it doesn't outclass the original trilogy. Its reviewer wrote, despite its issues, Andromeda is a welcome return to one of my favorite fictional universes, and I am still not ready to let Mass Effect go.
Alright, so let's dig into the backstory first and get into the parts of the game that critics liked, because there are some good things about it. It is true. It is not an utter disaster.
I want to believe. You were the chosen one, Mass Effect Andromeda. You play Scott or Sarah Ryder, who is part of a colonization mission of tens of thousands of people on their way to their new home in the Andromeda Galaxy. You wake up from a 600-year cryosleep, and your job is to find out if the new planets you've arrived at are suitable for the other travelers.
Now, as for the highlights of the game, reviewers pretty much universally praised the game's combat.
Eurogamer said that the combat is the saving grace of the game. It takes the guns and abilities from previous entries and introduces a boost jump, jet dashing, and an unprecedented array of gear crafting options.
The boost jump is pretty fun. GamesBeat noted that, depending on how you customize your rider, encounters can play out in a number of varied ways. GamesBeat said you can play it as a Gears of War style cover shooter, where you have force-like powers to lift enemies out from behind obstacles, or you can also play as a sniper demolitionist, or any number of other combinations.
The game also brings back weapon modifications from the first Mass Effect, adding even more role-playing mechanics that can be overwhelming to some, but very satisfying to hardcore fans.
Now, as for the story, some reviewers praised the game's lighter tone. Forbes said that Mass Effect Andromeda is one of the most hopeful, optimistic games I've ever played, and I quite like that about it. The focus is on exploration and discovery, finding a new home for humanity and the other alien races. And that's true, like instead of trying to save the universe from utter destruction, you're trying to create a new home. And so it's born out of it, the very dark place that is the Mass Effect trilogy, But it is like, we'll survive and we're gonna make a new place. It's kind of cool that way.
You have to fight to make that new home?
You do, yes. You have to invade other alien species, but
Kick them out.
That's just kind of like what we do as humans,
Build
so
a
we're
wall.
good at that.
Forbes also noted that the tone is often lighthearted and playful and lets these characters actually feel like they're having fun on their adventure. For Ryder specifically, it makes sense as a very young explorer thrust into this big role, and the script and story make her character feel authentic.
Or his. Others also praised the game's varied landscapes that you can't help but want to explore. Critical Hit said that the game's first planet is desert-like, that's Eos for those of you who've played EA Access, but it gradually lets you explore frozen tundras, dense, lush biomes, and everything in between, trying to find somewhere that's suitable for sustaining human life. You'll even see giant flying space lobsters. And who doesn't want a giant flying space lobster?
Is there giant flying butter also?
Delicious.
The game's cooperative multiplayer, which is similar to the wave-based gameplay of Mass Effect 3, also won praise from a number of outlets.
Okay, so that's the good stuff.
Can I cover my ears?
You can cover your ears. Earmuffs. Now for the bad stuff. First off, as has been reported extensively, the character animations were universally knocked for being not good.
Yeah, that's maybe being kind. GamesBeat wrote that the faces look like they've been run through a Xerox machine about 25 times. The contrast on all of the facial blemishes and imperfections is turned up to the max, and it's difficult to look at. I actually felt physically repulsed looking at the standard male Ryder face.
You should try the female Ryder faces.
A far cry from Shepard.
Reviewers also noticed a lot of bugs in Mass Effect Andromeda. Lots and lots of bugs, which range from the hilarious, which is kind of amusing, to kind of game-breaking.
GamesBeat's reviewer said, I've had my character load in completely bald for a 20-minute section of gameplay. I've had crucial geometry related to a quest not functioning properly. And yes, I've had my character's walking animation completely fall apart. Mass Effect Andromeda so far is broken.
Yeah, I had a couple of those issues playing through. Nothing huge. I didn't have any of the crazy duck walking yet, but things like I was clipping through other human characters in the introduction. Like I could just walk right through them like they were ghosts. That was kind of weird. Characters
Maybe you're the ghost.
Holding their guns backwards, or just like generally, it just didn't feel like it had been paid a lot of attention to. Eurogamer's critic wrote that it is one of the most technically uneven games I've ever reviewed, and it's hard to believe that the game made it to retail in this state. Its reviewer wrote, I was unable to finish one major side quest because the game refused to display the prompt that lets you board the starship in question. At another point, I was unable to die, seemingly because Andromeda had decided that I needed to revive a squad mate before it could show me the mission failure screen.
Others had issues with the game's writing as well as the new interaction system that replaced the old Paragon Renegade system from previous games, because you know, if it ain't broke, fix it. The new split is between rational, emotional, casual, and professional options, and some said it feels non-committal.
It's true that you don't really know where stuff is going, and some of the split options you have, they don't really give you an indication either way, like you could be saying the same thing for either one. As Eurogamer put it, it's basically the choice between Board Rider, Stoppy Rider, Flip Rider, and Parent Rider, neither of whom are really worth getting to know.
Forbes also knocked the game's story and characters, saying that the dramatic weight present in the older games just isn't there for the most part. Forbes wrote, I just don't know if Andromeda produces those big moments that you remember from past Mass Effect games.
GamesBeat summed up the problems with the game's story this way. My biggest criticism of Andromeda is that it just never feels like you're actually exploring an entirely new galaxy. Nothing about the story, the gameplay, the aliens, the ships, the missions, or anything else feels all that different from what players will remember doing in the Milky Way in the first 3 Mass Effects. Which is true, you turn up to a whole new galaxy and the first thing that happens is you get shot out with guns by a new alien species.
No.
Guns? Really? They didn't evolve in a completely different way?
Others hated the many fetch quests in the game, saying they make it feel mundane and boring.
As Eurogamer said, the lion's share of Andromeda's missions are busy work. Go to a waypoint, scan 10 remnant collapsible shelving units with your ugly wrist-mounted display, scoop up 5 mineral deposits for some lazy buffing back on the Nexus, blow up 3 raider outposts, and so forth. Although, interestingly enough, I've heard, and I quite like this outlook on some of the side quests, where in a lot of open world games, side quests are distracting you from the main objective, which tends to be save the world. And in Mass Effect, at least all the side quests feel like they're adding to that. A little bit like the original Mass Effect trilogy was really good with that. You'd go and do all these things and they would increase your readiness. So kind of like that, where even if you're going off and doing your own thing, you're still contributing to the overall goal.
In all, the reviews for Mass Effect Andromeda seem to indicate that the game is just okay.
Not a disaster, not the best thing ever, it's just okay.
The problem is that okay is not good enough for a Mass Effect game, and to make matters worse, the game is releasing in a pretty crowded field of really good games.
GamesBeat wrote that Mass Effect Andromeda might have worked a decade ago on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Ouch, a decade. But it doesn't work in a world that is delivering games like Horizon Zero Dawn, Nier Automata, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, all within a couple of weeks. In this reality, BioWare's latest role-playing game is old, broken, and often boring.
Critical Hit, which gave Andromeda one of its highest reviews, said that it uses new technology to create bigger, better-looking worlds, but it doesn't do much that we haven't seen from the series before. It doesn't make much of a generational leap. For better or worse, it's really just more Mass Effect, and I'm okay with that. I don't know if I'm gonna be okay with that.
That's the trick, is like if that's what you're buying into is just more Mass Effect, you'll probably be okay. If you are hoping for it to outshine the original trilogy, you're gonna have a bad time. Anyway, what do you guys think of the reviews for Mass Effect Andromeda? Are you planning on picking the game up in spite of its problems? Let us know in the comments.
And for all your Mass Effect news, be sure to like this video and subscribe to The Know.
God only knows how much of it we're gonna have in the next few weeks.
What's my broken walk animation? Is it like...
Poor character animations.
Why would someone knock on that door?
Some reviewers praised the game's lighter tone. As for the story, some review... Are you fucking with me?